Weep away my pain. Bring your healing to my heart. Help me love once again. Cares and worries get me down. Fear of failure fills my day. When I'm lost and all alone, help me, Lord, to find your way. People knocking at my door, strangers seeking love and care. Never let me turn them down. Teach me gently how to share. Children, come into my life with your laughter and your song. When will I become like them? Teach me, Lord, to sing along.
Shalom, dear friends. May the peace of the Lord be with you. Some of you who were regularly with me on a pilgrimage through the study of the Pentateuch were surprised by my absence from the scene for nearly 2 months. It was due to my ill health caused by a viral fever that impeded my normal responsibilities. I am now very happy to resume this pilgrimage with you. Thanks very much for your patience. Yehovah Rapha, Yahweh heals. Let us now recapitulate what we have seen so far. The book of Leviticus, as a book of worship, deals basically with the theme of holiness. The main purpose of the book is to instruct the Israelites so that they may lead holy lives in communion with their holy God. Because ritual sacrifices are important in Israel's cultic life, the first 7 chapters describe ritual regulations for offering sacrifices. Chapter 1, 2, and 3 deal with burnt offerings or holocaust. Chapters 4 and 5 speak of atonement sacrifices. Chapters 6 and 7 give special instruction for the priest. The solemn ceremony of ordination prescribed for Aaron and his sons is carried out in chapters 8, 9, and 10. While chapter 9 emphasizes the acceptance of Aaron's offering, on the same day, another sacrifice is rejected, leading to the death of Aaron's eldest sons that we find in chapter 10. The same divine fire that consumed the sacrifices at the end of chapter 9 positively now unfortunately consumes the sons of Aaron. And this tragic episode of the death of Aaron's sons transcends the interest of mere narration and emphasizes the importance of strict adherence to priestly duties. During the time of the octave day celebration, Nadab and Abihu, the eldest sons of Aaron, offered an illicit incense offering for which they suffered a fiery death in the Lord's presence. Now, question is, what was the reason? It is very difficult to determine the exact nature of their sin. They capriciously took censers of their own, put incense in them, and offered unauthorized fire, literally strange or foreign fire, as given in the Hebrew version. Different translations give us different leads to the explanation. The offense is interpreted as doing the sacrifice in their own way, instead what is authorized by the Lord. And as a result, they were instantly killed. That is what English Standard Version ESV tells us. And other suggestions include acting at the wrong time or not being properly vested, stipulated by the rules. The death was caused by a holy fire from the altar. Lightning could have struck them dead. Since they were at the altar at the time, the people would certainly interpret any happening as coming from the Lord. Remember what we discussed during our study on Exodus? Extraordinary concurrence of ordinary events. Extraordinary concurrence of ordinary events. Lightning at this moment is interpreted. The clue is also given from verses 9 to 10. It is possible that the 7-day celebration by Aaron and his sons, they would have imbibed much wine. 7-day celebration. Leviticus chapter 10 would say, "You and your descendants must never drink wine or any other alcoholic drink before going into the tabernacle. If you do, you will die." This is a permanent law for you, and it must be kept by all future generations. So even though Nadab and Abihu could have been struck by lightning, it is possible that they were intoxicated and they put wrong mixture on the fire, resulting in a flare-up and consequent asphyxiation. In fact, verse 5 says, they were buried in their tunics. Friends, the prohibition of alcohol probably relates to its impairing effects, as we see in several passages. Proverbs chapter 21, 23, Hosea chapter 4, 9 to 11, Isaiah. Jerusalem Bible's translation of Proverbs chapter 20 verse 1 like this: "Wine is reckless, liquor rowdy, unwise to anyone whom it seduces." Proverbs 23:31 says, "Don't let the sparkle and smooth taste of wine deceive you, for in the end it bites like a poisonous serpent. It stings like a viper." Hosea chapter 4, 9, "And it will be like people, like priests. So I will punish them for their ways and repay them for their deeds. Harlotry, wine, and new wine take away their understanding." So this point flows into the following verses about the priest distinguishing the clean from the unclean and instructing the Torah to the people of God. Now, let me make an observation. The story probably explains how an old priesthood is replaced by the Aaronic priesthood, the priesthood flowing from Aaron, which means priesthood directly or descended strictly from the family of Aaron and not the general Levitical priesthood. It is now through Aaron and his third son Eleazar, because first two sons are dead, that the Levitical priesthood is continued almost up to the time of Jesus. However, the lesson also teaches us not to tamper with the prescriptions of the Lord and not to invent any religious practice or try to manipulate God magically. At the expense of the incident of the life of Nadab and Abihu, the congregation as well as Aaron and all priests of all generations have to learn this very important lesson. I would like to add the official Jewish rabbinic explanation. The rabbis and the medieval Jewish commentators were incredulous at the idea that God had struck down two young priests for a mere ritual offense, especially since it seemed to stem from a very sincere, though perhaps over-enthusiastic desire to serve the Lord. So they suggested other reasons such as drunkenness, celibacy, and neglect of other sacred obligations. In biblical thought, however, ritual crimes are dire. In chapter 10, verses 10 to 11, we have two major tasks of the priests that require a sober brain and wide knowledge about God's statutes. The priests have the competence and authority to distinguish between sacred and profane, between clean and unclean. And they have to teach the Israelites accordingly. It is crucial for the Israelites that their priests fulfill these tasks responsibly and meticulously. Later, prophets like Ezekiel, Isaiah, and Malachi made severe criticism of priests who failed in their responsibilities. Instead, prophets like Jeremiah and Hosea have reiterated that unholy priests were responsible for the fall of the nation and the subsequent exile to Babylon. I will read to you from Hosea chapter 4, verse 4. Don't point your finger at someone else and try to pass the blame. Look, you priests, my complaint is with you. Now, to conclude this section, we speak of the theology of priesthood. Privilege must not erode into being intoxicated by power and prestige. the priest is called from among the people to be accountable to the community and is answerable before God. The priest is commissioned with the Torah, that is an instruction of the law, meaning the people turn to him to understand the Lord's will. The Hebrew word Torah means both to teach and to direct. The priest is to learn the proper direction or the order and then teach others. In English too, we have the fuller meaning in basically the same word that is used, which has the meaning of disciple and discipline. Both have the same root. Kingly duties are much the same. The king must exact justice impartially and is condemned for injustices, as we see in 2 Samuel chapter 12, 1 to 12. See how Nathan judges King David. Friends, now we come to the very important section, the laws regarding purity, from chapter 11 to chapter 15. This is the most popularly associated section in Leviticus, related to ancient customs and matters of daily life. Now, to the modern readers, such detailed attention to unclean food, defilement at childbirth, leprosy, personal hygiene, and scapegoats seem very primitive and superstitious and sometimes bizarre. This section is also probably the most misunderstood part of the entire book of Leviticus. The origin of clean and unclean things are rooted in a variety of needs and experiences. Anthropologically, some foods become forbidden because they easily get spoiled and cause illness. Others do not fit into the distinct categories and thus seem abnormal, such as reptiles dwelling in water and on land and on birds that cannot fly, animals that eat carrion, consume what is dead and thus become unclean. Boundaries are also involved. So skin lesions cross the boundaries of the inner and outer parts of the body. Something is out of order. Theologically, the order shows itself in fidelity to the categories and the boundaries of creation, as we found in Genesis chapter 1. God made birds of the air, fish of the sea, and the land animals. Phenomena that blur this order are abnormal and unclean. So they take us back to the primordial chaos before the creation of the world by God in chapter 1 of Genesis. However, the values underlying these laws are timeless. We should note that purity and holiness govern these regulations. This section, that is from chapters 11 to 15, concerns the clean and the unclean. Now, chapter 11 deals what is taken internally, clean and unclean food, animals that may and may not be eaten, and they are listed here. Those of the land animals from verse 1 to 8, or of the sea, verse 7 to 12, and of the air, 13 to 19, and finally those found in all these three areas, insects and swarming creatures from verse 20 to 23. We can make a general rule regarding clean land animals, that edible animals must be split hooved and cud chewing. This would permit beef, lamb, and considerable wild game. The above standards exclude the pig and the camel. You must remember that the ancient world did not have the sophisticated biology of fauna that we have today. So some of the biblical understanding of animals is imprecise. Thus, although the rock badger and the hare chew the cud, they are not ruminants. Many Christians may be wondering why pork falls into the category of forbidden meat according to the book of Leviticus. A simple search on Google will reveal that pork is the most widely eaten meat in the world, especially in some of the traditionally Christian countries. The classification between clean and unclean animals is more popular than scientific, since the distinction was made in the remote past, and in a remote area we may have to turn to various factors. First, medical. Certain animals are prone to infectious diseases and are known to carry them. Bats, for example, are the natural reservoir for the Nipah virus. Many in the Buddhist tradition believe that Buddha died eating pork. Pigs that eat tapeworm eggs from the environment can develop cysts in their muscles. Thus, eating undercooked infected pork can cause people to develop tapeworms. There are many flesh-eating animals and birds. They are carriers of parasites and diseases. Animals that are carrion consume what is dead and thus unclean. Secondly, religious. One must avoid what is abnormal according to the creation story in Genesis chapter 1. Land animals walk on all four legs. Fish swim with fins and have gills. And birds fly with wings and walk on hind legs. Some animals are defective and fail to reflect God's original plan of creation. Let us call them freaks of nature, judging by the account of creation in Genesis. Normal would be, fish that swim, birds that fly, they are all fully part of God's plan. However, flightless birds like ostriches, sea creatures that walk and not swim like whales or mammals, and animals that crawl close to the ground like insects are aberrations and considered unclean. Thirdly, arbitrary reasons. Israel wants to be separate and want to be distinguished from their neighbors. It is believed that the Canaanites used pigs in their worship. So, for the Israelites, they were forbidden, an animal that was used for worship by the Canaanites. To conclude, the primary concern is to distinguish what is considered clean and unclean in the created order. The wanton and unregulated consumption of meat is forbidden from the beginning of Genesis chapter 1. And it violates the call for humankind to be the stewards of creation, Genesis chapter 1:26. It is part of God's providence to warn us, to give us a warning about certain foods that will cause us danger. Before a movie, the government wants everyone to be aware of a statutory warning. Smoking is injurious to health. So our health is very much part of God's special concern. We can also notice the development of a theology of ecology emerging from Leviticus 11. Friends, we continue with chapter 12 in the next episode. Till then, Shalom.
Loving God, we thank you for the blessing of reading your word together. We ask that these words of life, truth, and hope would continue to impact us in the days ahead. May your love and grace follow each of us, refreshed and blessed by you. Amen.